How can a marriage lead to the discovery of Brazil? Portugal. King John I rode all night long. He needed to reach Porto before sunrise. The year is 1387. King John I marries Philippa of Lancaster, an English princess. From this union would come the princes who would go down in history as the illustrious generation. Among them were Edward, Peter, Henry, and Ferdinand. The youngest was Henry, born in 1394. No one imagined that this boy would become one of the most important figures in the history of Portugal. In 1411, after years of peace, King John wished for his sons to be knighted. But for the king, this honor was not to be earned in a ceremony, but rather on a real battlefield. It was then that his eyes turned to Ceuta, a powerful city located in North Africa in present-day Morocco. Ceuta controlled one of the most important trade routes between Africa and the Mediterranean. Gold, ivory, silk, spices, and countless riches passed through its markets daily. Furthermore, Muslim corsairs frequently attacked Christian vessels, harming Portuguese trade. For merchants, conquering Ceuta meant controlling one of the gateways to African trade. For many nobles, the spirit of the Reconquista, the long struggle waged for centuries against the Muslim kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula, still endured. For the king's sons, this would be the perfect opportunity to prove their courage. On July 23, 1415, a massive Portuguese armada set sail for Africa. The fleet comprised dozens of vessels, galleys, carracks, and other warships carrying between 40 and 50,000 men. Its destination was Ceuta. Known as the City of Seven Hills, Ceuta was one of the wealthiest trading hubs in the known world. It remains Spanish territory to this day. Despite being located on the African continent, upon landing, the Portuguese were struck by what they saw. The streets bustled with merchants from diverse regions. Shops displayed gold, silver, silk, finely crafted carpets, Eastern spices, and luxury goods never before seen in Portugal. The buildings stood out for their refined architecture and intricate detailing. That very day, following fierce fighting, the Portuguese flag was flying over the city's highest point. Unbeknownst to them, this marked the first major step toward Portugal's future maritime expansion. The conquest seemed perfect, but there was a problem. Muslim merchants simply changed their routes. Caravans stopped heading to Ceuta and began trading in cities like Tangier and Tunis. Without trade, maintaining the city became extremely costly. In 1418, a large army attempted to retake Ceuta, but it failed. It was during his time in the city that Prince Henry made a decisive discovery. While speaking with a Moorish prisoner, he learned about the origin of the gold reaching Ceuta's markets. Much of it came from the mines of the powerful Mali Empire, passing through major trading centers like Timbuktu. The gold was transported by massive caravans across the Sahara Desert. Trading took place in a curious manner. Merchants would leave behind salt, textiles, or other goods. The gold producers would place the amount they deemed fair next to them. If both parties agreed to the exchange, they simply collected the goods. Often, not a word was spoken as they spoke different languages. Prince Henry realized then that if Portugal could find a direct route to those riches, it could change its destiny forever. Reaching African gold by land was virtually impossible. The Portuguese were unfamiliar with the desert, they did not master camel caravans, nor did they control those routes. Only one alternative remained: the sea. Prince Henry was a remarkable figure. He never married. He was determined, tenacious, and passionate about knowledge. Instead of seeking wealth solely through warfare, he decided to invest in science. He gathered cartographers, mathematicians, astronomers, navigators, and scholars from across Europe, including many Jews who had faced persecution in their home countries. There, a true revolution in nautical knowledge began. But a massive obstacle still lay ahead.
Prince Henry believed it would be possible to reach African riches by sailing along the coast. He also attempted to conquer the Canary Islands, which were considered strategic for future expeditions. However, all attempts failed, and the archipelago remained under Castilian rule. Despite this, other discoveries would completely alter Portuguese plans. The Madeira Islands and, later, the Azores became important bases for provisioning, settlement, and the reorganization of future Portuguese fleets. The route southward was slowly beginning to open up, but there was an obstacle that terrified all navigators: Cape Bojador.
For many years, Cape Bojador was considered the edge of the known world. It was said to be home to sea monsters, boiling waters, and currents impossible to overcome. About 15 expeditions attempted to sail past it. All of them failed. Then, in 1434, Gil Eanes achieved the impossible. Upon returning to Portugal, he was hailed as a hero and knighted into the Order of Christ. But rounding the Cape was only half the challenge. The return journey was far more difficult. The winds blew in the opposite direction. It was then that the Portuguese began to perfect a new type of vessel, lighter, faster, capable of sailing even against the wind. An innovation that would forever change the history of navigation. It was at this moment that the Portuguese developed the caravel, and a significant technological breakthrough launched the Portuguese Empire. And the Portuguese maritime industry would rise to prominence. In 1434, Gil Eanes rounded the Cape. Instead of simply turning back, he went ashore and gathered roses de Santa Maria, taking them back to Portugal as proof that he had ventured beyond. In 1445, the Portuguese established the trading post of Arguin, considered the first permanent trading post on the African coast. Decades after the conquest of Ceuta, they finally reached the Senegal River region, known as the Rio do Oro. Trade flourished. Gold, ivory, Malagueta pepper, hides, and other African products arrived. Unfortunately, one of the darkest chapters of Portuguese history also grew: the slave trade. Men, women, and children began to be sold as merchandise. It was a cruel trade that enriched Portugal and transformed Lisbon into one of Europe's major centers of the slave trade. In 1460, Prince Henry died at the age of 66. He did not live to see Portugal reach the Indies, but he left the doors to maritime expansion wide open. In 1481, King John II ascended the throne. Determined and strategic, he strengthened the Portuguese navy and ordered the construction of the fortress of São Jorge de Mina in present-day Ghana to protect the gold trade. In 1482, he sent Diogo Coe to further explore the African coast. The navigator reached the mouth of the Congo River and erected a stone marker, officially establishing the Portuguese presence. He continued on to regions near present-day Angola before returning. Meanwhile, a Genoese navigator was seeking support for a bold idea. Christopher Columbus believed it was possible to reach the Indies by sailing west. King John II refused to finance his expedition. The king had another plan. In 1487, he sent Bartholomew Dias to attempt to discover the southern tip of Africa. After facing one of the fiercest storms ever recorded by the Portuguese, Portuguese, Bartholomew realized he had rounded the African continent. It was the first time a European had rounded that cape. Upon his return, King John II gave it a new name, the Cape of Good Hope, because there was now hope of reaching the Indies by sea. In 1492, Christopher Columbus finally secured support, but not from Portugal. He was funded by the Catholic monarchs of Spain, with whom Queen Isabella held him in high regard. Meanwhile, Portugal was consolidating its strategy. In 1491, the Treaty of Tordesillas was signed, securing for Portugal the territory extending 370 leagues west of Cape Verde and dividing future discoveries between Portugal and Spain. In 1495, King John II died. The mission to reach the Indies passed to his successor, King Manuel I. The decisive moment had arrived. After the death of King John II, King Manuel I ascended the Portuguese throne, determined to realize the dream his predecessor had pursued for decades, finding a sea route to the Indies. To prepare for the greatest expedition in Portuguese history, the king drew upon the experience of Bartholomew Dias, the man who had discovered the passage beyond the Cape of Good Hope. Drawing on lessons learned from that earlier voyage, the vessels were improved. The traditional caravels, excellent for exploration, gave way to larger, sturdier ships capable of carrying provisions for months at sea. Their hulls were reinforced, and a combination of square and lateen sails allowed them to better harness the varying wind patterns of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. When everything was ready, a decision was made that would change history. Although Bartholomew Dias was Portugal's most experienced navigator, King Manuel chose a different commander to lead the mission. The man chosen was Vasco da Gama, a nobleman respected by the crown and considered the ideal person to represent Portugal before the powerful rulers of the East. On July 8, 1497, the fleet departed from Lisbon. After passing Cape Verde, Vasco headed into the open sea using the technique known as the Volta do Mar, moving away from the coast to take advantage of Atlantic winds. In November, he became the second navigator to round the Cape of Good Hope. After passing along the east coast of Africa, he received assistance from an experienced local pilot to cross the Indian Ocean. In May 1498, Vasco da Gama finally arrived in Calicut, India. Portugal had found the long-sought sea route to the east. In 1499, Vasco da Gama returned to Lisbon bearing the news Portugal had awaited for nearly a century. The route to the Indies existed. Now, that route had to be consolidated. The following year, King Manuel organized a new expedition. Command was entrusted to Pedro Álvares Cabral. 85 years elapsed between the conquest of Ceuta in 1415 and the departure of Cabral's fleet in 1500. They were decades marked by failures, discoveries, research, investment, and courage. Portugal brought together navigators, cartographers, astronomers, shipbuilders, and merchants, all united by a single goal: to reach the riches of the East. The arrival in Brazil was not an isolated event. It was the result of an entire generation that dared to sail uncharted seas, transforming a small European kingdom into the greatest maritime power of its time.